Hey, it's Lee here from Simplify Adulting, and today we're going to be talking about something that makes most of us cringe. Yes, the dreaded B word. We're going to be talking about budgets and budgeting because if you are stressed out about money, feel like you're constantly surprised about what's in your bank account, and especially if you're being hit with fees, service charges, and overdraft costs because you just don't know where your money is, then you need to get more comfortable with budgeting. And that's what we're going to spend time on today. So, first of all, there's a lot of misconceptions about budgeting, and I'm guilty of them too. It feels negative, it can feel really heavy. For some reason, we associate with budgeting like cutting back or being restrictive. And it makes us feel like it's kind of just zaps the fun and the energy out of everything. And I have those money stories that go on. I have that story about budgeting. So I have to be really focused on saying, okay, wait, let me really get grounded in what budgeting does for me, because it's actually the opposite of those misconceptions. That when we have a budget and a budget that works, and it's a budget based in reality, it really helps us attain the things we want in life. Because by having a budget, it's a roadmap to being able to secure the financial, funds we need, the money we need to do the things that we value the most. And it really also helps us say no to the stuff that at the end of the day doesn't really matter to us. And I want to make a small point there. Notice I said what we value and not what we want, because wants can be very fleeting, and some ad can pop up and go, oh, I want that. But really, you're like, gosh, I don't really want it. It was just kind of a momentary thing, right? So when we think about what we really value in life and use that as kind of the mindset around our budget, it really no longer feels restrictive, but feels super empowering. And there's really, at this point, if you're watching this and you're like, okay, my money's disappearing, I don't know where it's going, then we need to think about budget 101. And if you're somebody where you've got it all under control and you're now wondering how to invest in cryptocurrency, well, that ain't me. And this video is not for you. But if you're truly saying, like, hey, how do I just start to get out of this money stress associated with not ever quite knowing where my money is at? Then budgeting is for you. And we're going to keep it simple, like we try to do with everything at Simplify Adulting. And I want you to think about a budget really being about three main things. One is, what's my money coming in? Number two, what money is going out? And three is, how does that align up to my money goals? That's really what a budget is at a super basic level. And once we get the basics down, sure, we can go in and add some granularity to that. And we can add on more conscious ways to even get more tuned into our money. But right now, we're keeping it super basic. So those are the three things. And what I'm about to show you is actually available in the show notes. There'll be a link to this exact sheet for you. And what I want to do is kind of take those three ideas of a budget and just kind of walk through with you how you can start this process. And so, what I really recommend doing is starting with looking at kind of a full month. So, if you're in the beginning of a month now, you could look back at the last month, because really the most important thing about our budget is that it's based in reality and not kind of what we want it to be or what we kind of think it is. Because I guarantee you, as a little side exercise, I want you just to do some things like, hey, I bet I spent this much on certain categories. And I bet 90% of the time you're spending more than you think you're spending on any given thing. It's just what happens naturally. We kind of lose sight of stuff. And that's why we have to be in reality. So really the foundation steps of doing a budget is just capturing our real life income coming in and our expenses going out. So this top section here is really just an opportunity for you to say what's coming in from income. And we all could have our regular job. And again, I would look at this on a monthly level. We all have our regular job. And so you can look at what that gross amount is means before tax and before all those other things that may come out if you do have benefits or other things that come onto your paycheck. So you want to look at that after tax amount to know what's actually landing in your bank account. And some of you may have a side hustle, or you may do side gigs, or you may have a different, walk dogs, do whatever those types of things are. And so I added a couple other lines where you could capture other income sources, because that's a key aspect of our budget. Number one, money coming in. Okay, so the next step in this process then, and this one's going to take a little bit more time, and it's going to really require you probably could do your income pretty much off the top of your head. But when it comes to our expenses, it requires us pulling up an app for our bank and truly going to a month's worth of spend. And you can just forget about stuff. So you got to pull this up. And I want you to think about expenses in two ways. And it's going to be relevant when we get to the last part of this, is I want you to think about capturing your expenses and what I'm calling fixed expenses, and then what I'm calling variable expenses. And I want you to think about your fixed expenses as being those things that, guess what? You kind of have to pay them. You're not getting out of it. So this would be your rent. If you want your apartment, you kind of have to pay your rent. Utilities would fall into that. A car payment, a credit card payment, anything that really you need to pay it, or there's going to be repercussions for that, right? So I want you to think about those fixed expenses going on one side. And again, this matters. It'll help make things more simple when we get to the last step. On the other side here, you can see that we have something called variable expenses. And those are the things that really you can turn on and off the spigot. So things that would go in here would be dinners out, Netflix. So some of your subscriptions, if you have apps where you can cancel them, those are those things that are, guess what? You didn't have to do it. You couldn't spend it. And the tricky one here is where you decide to put grocery. I would say you put grocery store when it's truly about making your meals and doing that on your fixed expense. And I would include things like restaurants, DoorDash, delivery fees for, getting your coffees, those types of things, or your Dutch Bros, whatever it is. That's the type of thing that's kind of variable, that you can certainly kind of cut that back. So once you capture those two sides, and here's where I'm going to also give you a pointer. This is going to churn up a lot of stuff. I'm guessing some judgment, some shame, probably some guilt. And guess what? That's natural. Still happens to me. It's just the stress that comes with money. Tons of great stuff comes with money, but lots of stress comes with money as well. So when that happens, I want you to just take a moment. I want you to feel your feet on the ground. I mean, really feel your feet solidly planted on the ground. Take 3 big cleansing breaths and just say, I got this. And just let those feelings kind of pass. They're momentary. They're just natural because we're doing something that's kind of scary and, to be honest, pretty unpleasant. So it's just going to peak that stuff up. Don't let it be an obstacle. Just take those deep breaths, feel your feet grounded on the floor, think about your feet just for a few minutes, and it'll take your mind off those nasty little thoughts. So you're going to do fixed, you're going to do variable, and then you're going to add those things up. And at the bottom here, you're going to put your total income in, and then you're going to put your total expenses, which is a combination of your variable and your fixed. And then you're going to do, okay, what's the balance of that? And the good thing is, if you have a positive balance, what that basically means is that your living expenses are coming in underneath your income streams. So you have a positive, and you can decide what you're doing with that money. Are you putting in a savings account? Are you saving it for a particular purpose, an emergency fund, whatever that means to you? And that's awesome. So you can say, okay, but if it's in the negative, you've got a problem, because it means the opposite is true, that your monthly expenses are exceeding your monthly income. And we need to do some problem solving. And by the way, these next steps totally make sense, even if you're in the positive, because it's a great way to say, wow, Could I be more positive? And could I put more in an emergency fund? Could I start that emergency fund? Or can I put more away for a trip that you want to take, whatever that may be? So this next step, it helps regardless. But what you need to do now is if you have that negative number, you kind of have to say, okay, I have two levers to pull here. I can either increase my income, I can decrease my expenses, or guess what? I could pull both of those levers. And so this balanced budget idea is a place for you to brainstorm. So maybe you have that side hustle and it allows you to pick up some additional time. Maybe that's the way you can do that. And then you could also, now this is where you're fixed, you're kind of stuck, those fixed expenses, but you can go to that variable side and say, you know what? Right now, I'm canceling these subscriptions. I just don't have room for this in my budget. And you can look through those. And if you go back to that value thing and say, what is it that I can really do without that really, guess what, doesn't give me enough joy to endure this stress? Because when that number is negative, there is tons of stress. So you have to say, I value not being stressed about money more than I value my coffee outs or my dinners that I, purchase out, my DoorDash fees, my Netflix, whatever it is. That's where you get to have that honest conversation with yourself and kind of say what's right for you. And so this can all be super daunting. So I want to give you another hint. If you have a friend that you can support each other in this journey, I highly recommend it because, as I said, this is going to kick up some yucky stuff. That's a technical term, some yucky stuff here when you start to take on, boy, how do I start to get my money under control? Money just has a lot of stress hooked into it for us. So getting a friend can help you do this process. And once you do this deep dive, I really recommend that on a weekly basis, you just go in and you start to look at how are your expenses going? How does your budget look? Kind of look at your sheet and say, wow, is this really what I'm spending? Like, have I cut back enough? But it starts to get you in a cadence. And so I recommend that you either have Money Monday, where you take a look at, reality, which is what did I spend? Great thing to do after the weekend. You could do what I call Financial Friday, which could be a great way to set you up for a weekend. If you tend to spend heavier on the weekend, you could say, okay, I'm going to look at my budget and see what my real situation is. And guess what? I'm going to kind of, depends on what my money situation is going to drive what I do this weekend. And so I just think that weekly touch base in is going to help you start to go from, oh my gosh, how did I get another overdraft fee? Or how is all my money gone? It seems like I just got paid, into saying, okay, I have a much better sense of where my money is going, where I'm spending it, and how much is coming in. And I guarantee you, you will absolutely reduce your stress as you start to get honest with yourself about your budget. So there you go. This is what I want you to do. I want you to go down in the show notes and click on the link to get this sheet, set 25 minutes on your timer, and sit down and just go through and see what you can do in 25 minutes. If you don't finish, you just take a break, walk away from it, and come back in just 25-minute increments. You get this down and go from chaos to control when it comes to your budget. So tune in. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know, or hit that bell if you want to know when we put up new videos, because if you're overwhelmed by adulting, we can change that.